Thanks for your presentation. You're going to talk about resiliency, but not only in systems, also in humans, right?
Yes.
Good. Welcome.
So, yeah, 251. Okay. So, welcome everyone to this talk. This talk is called Shipping Through Chaos. And with this talk, I intend to maybe familiarize you with a development style or the engineering environment in a different country altogether, Japan. So let me ask this question. Yeah, it goes to sleep. It's slightly sleep deprived. Uh, yeah, I read somewhere that you should bribe people for attention. So I'm just keeping them here. Maybe some souvenirs from Japan, right? So in this talk, I want to kind of talk about the development scene in Japan and working uh, in, yeah, this is a diverse environment as well. So let me ask this question. How many of you here have worked outside Europe, like in a different country? Okay, you're the first responder. So, maybe I've piqued your attention. So let's talk. Let's start the talk. This will keep going on sleep. It's fine. So imagine this: you're leading a big project, which has a team in two different countries, and that comes with time zone and cultural adjustments. And this specific project involves like 8 technical domains, and out of 8, 5 are brand new to you. And the release deadline is immovable, Christmas. Unfortunately, you cannot reschedule Christmas. I tried. And when working with business partners, some of the discussions happen in a language that I'm not really conversational at, Japanese. And because this is not chaotic enough, there's a reorg, and everyone on the project changes except you. So the product managers changed, managers like the engineering manager changed, backend engineers changed, front end engineers, can you guess, also changed. So, however, despite all this, you're able to deliver results. So on the x-axis we have months, so 6 months, and on y-axis we have profits. So in case it's hard to read, the first month profit was 61,000 yen, and the 6 month was 104 million yen. It will keep going on sleep, don't mind it too much. And throughout this 6 months, okay, throughout the 6 months, there were no new features, only bug fixes. So how do you achieve that? And yeah, in the 5th month, we went from like 20 million yen to 104 million yen. So 104 million yen is roughly 1 million euros. So let's talk about that. So a brief overview of this presentation. Let me start with introduction. So hi, I'm Kaustubh. I work as a senior software engineer in Mercari. And you can find the slides here. They will be also shared later. Yeah, quick picture, yeah. So before we talk about the project, let's talk about the product. So I work at this company called Mercari, which wants to create like a e-commerce marketplace where anyone can buy and sell. So people like you and I can sell and buy items from each other. And we have roughly 20 million users monthly, and that accounts for 1/6 of all of Japan. And we also allow like small to medium-sized enterprises, businesses to sell directly to customers. So that is B2C. Now to complete this triangle, we need C2B. So that is this project where we allowed people like you and I to sell to businesses. And why is that particularly challenging is that I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Japan, but there's this big culture of like thrifting and buying secondhand stores. So there are like a lot of secondhand buy and sell businesses. Actually, a lot of these slides are also secondhand. I copied them from an internal presentation. So there are a lot of businesses that want to buy from Mercari, but they cannot purchase it due to legal complications. And because of that, if I want to sell an item to this business, I need to physically visit their store, sell it to them, and yeah, it's not the easiest of processes. So let me talk about the system architecture very quickly. So let's say you're buying something on Amazon. What you would do is, let's say you want to buy an iPhone. You search an iPhone, you get like 100 results, maybe like 5 of them. And because there were like a few legal requirements, great. The business partner had to send offers to the sellers that, hey, I like these 5 items. And whoever accepts the offer is actually the one who starts the transaction. And as the buyer, I receive the item, I review it, and the transaction ends. The numbers seem odd, right? Let's come back to it. So the overall system architecture looks like this. The business partner only accesses the public API. So all our internal APIs here are hidden behind a layer, and all the customers use like either the Android app, the iOS app, or the web. And this is how they access it. I'm not going to go into too much details here. So yeah, you can imagine we need to expose internal APIs like search, offer, get, add a few new APIs, keeps on going on sleep. And we introduced a few webhooks for like when new items are listed. Like let's say if I want to buy iPhone, I want to be notified when an iPhone is listed, and also when transactions are started. So this webhook, we did not even plan for it, but that helped the business partners build automations on their side, so they could automatically send offers as soon as a new item is listed, and that resulted in a much higher, 5 times higher profit. And who here is familiar with principle of least privilege? Yeah. I see you. So yeah, for the other people in the audience, could you please explain it to us, Mr. Winner?
You scope your privilege list so everybody basically only has what they need. You take away everything else.
Right.
Leave them in a place where they can do their work, but they can't do anything you don't want.
Yeah. So we had like 10 business partners who had partnered with us for different projects. So we wanted to ensure that the C2B partners only can do these specific APIs. So we introduced API scopes, and that is the principle of least privilege, which the gentleman there nicely explained. Yeah. This is how it was working on the project as well. So to talk about the processes, this is probably the meat of this presentation, because we talked a lot about technical resilience so far in the sessions, but I want to talk about resilience in people and procedures, because at the end of the day, there are no technical mistakes, there are people mistakes. So how do you build systems that are resilient to like human mistakes or processes? So even when we defined the spec, like there were a few tasks which could be assigned either to the PM or the engineer, and they were defined that way. And when we did the technical investigation, I led with a delegation first mindset. So let's say there are like 8 new domains. So let's delegate the investigation of features instead of domains to people so that they can investigate it fully. And as a result, the design doc was 61 pages long, and it was written by 4 engineers. And one important thing here was it's important to speak the language. So let's assume everyone here speaks, and like everyone here speaks English. But if you have like biz dev, product, and like engineers, the way I would explain a feature to like biz dev, business, or product, and like engineers would be different, because their role requires them to pay attention to different details. And to add more complexity to this, there are a few people who only spoke Japanese, few people who only spoke English. And we also had our engineering team in 2 countries, like Japan and India. So we realized that, like I realized that, like when speaking to engineers in India, we need to very clearly define the expectations, whereas in Japan, even though the engineers might not be Japanese, they have a tendency to read the room and understand like and figure out things on their own. This is not to say like one culture is better than the other. It's just like how do you accommodate and like adapt your own processes to work with people of various cultures. And once the tasks were defined, for planning, we like leverage not just people's strengths but interests as well, because not everyone is like looking for a big challenge, not everyone's fighting for a promotion. So we assign people tasks based on their domain experience, as well as like what kind of challenge they want, and what is their language fluency. And in this case, language means programming as well as like human languages. And because there was a reorg, I had engineers who had like either 15 years experience and also new grads, and I don't get to choose the team. So I ensured that the new grads get projects or tasks that I have experience in, so that they had room to fail. And because they had room to fail, they had room to grow. And what I saw was the like new grads were able to take on like more challenging projects because like they were allowed like some faith. And yeah, as you can imagine, 15 engineers, I'm working with 10 different teams. So documentation could not be an afterthought here. So to talk about the design doc, it was used not only for onboarding after the reorg, but also we had like few engineers work for like 2 or 3 weeks only. So it was very easy then. And the whole design document was organized so that each of the 8 teams we were working at could review just a section instead of the entire document. Yeah, we really need to fix this. And this was the first time I was working with like external business partner as a service provider. So what I accidentally realized is we need to develop like an API contract, which seems very silly, but this API contract help build like shared understanding within the company across different roles as well as different companies. So we had product managers and engineers in another company as well as my company. And this is kind of an unethical life hack, but I would suggest preparing like meticulous meeting notes when you're talking with teams within the company, because in real time, if I'm working with another team and there's a lot of domain knowledge that they need to impart on me, in real time, I can like confirm that I'm understanding what APIs I need to use, what documentation I need to look at. And hopefully you don't have to do this, but it also helps establish a contract for two-sided development. So when two teams are working together, the lines are very clearly separated on this team does this team does that. And I'll come later on why this unfortunately became important. So yeah, because I was leading this project, and like I've led projects before, but not of this size. So I had to do a few things I did not expect I would have to do as a software engineer. So the first one was defining the scope and negotiating it heavily. So you have to treat the scope and the deadline like a hostage situation. So like let's say the feature list is defined, you have to half it, and then half it again, and that's the MVP. And it's natural that there are going to be new feature requests, or like in this project, we had like legal requirements changed. So I think like in the previous talk, someone mentioned about English literature students helping write prompts. In this project, we needed a Japanese lawyer who could understand engineering so that we could achieve DB normalization. And I'm not making that up. So yeah, whenever you're asked to add a new feature, you say, sure, the existing features will be delayed. Are you okay with delays? No one is okay with delays, except the screen. So how many people here, be ready with your hands. The first person to raise gets this. So how many people here use Slack? Okay. Down. Once more. How many people here use Slack? I could not check it properly. No, I already gave it to you. Okay. Okay. You should audition for Netherlands cricket team. So I absolutely abuse Slack's reminder feature for follow-ups. And because like if the team is so big, I had to like sometimes schedule follow-ups for follow-ups. So that could be either in DM or like if you want to do it in more blameless fashion, you can do channel reminders. And because this was a completely new team, we were working together for the first time, it was important to define like team conventions. Now this might sound extremely silly, but if we are making like code changes to a new domain that no one knows in the team, we ensured that everyone, like at least one person in the code, like team, reviewed that code before we request the external team. And that helped when people went on PTOs and stuff like that. And a lot of the execution could not have been possible without automation. So that means, like I'm talking about 3 automations here. So the first one was like creating a daily thread to request code review via Slackbot. Now that sounds very simple, but it helped ensure that existing pull requests get reviewed in time, as well as it added a lot of visibility for directors and leadership. And we also introduced a very interesting automation called like Russian roulette, which used Slack and Zapier to automatically assign people for code reviews. And more importantly, because this was a brand new product direction, there were like a lot of open-ended questions that involved roles for like legal, biz dev, a lot more. So we used like, my manager introduced this automation. Hello. Okay, it's gone. Oh. Yeah. So my manager introduced this automation that if on Slack, like in my company, we have this culture where open-ended questions are discussed on Slack and the replies go to 100. I don't know if you've had that before. So we introduced a automation that if you add like a log emoji to Slack, to a Slack message, it is automatically added to a Google Sheet, and that Google Sheet is reviewed weekly so that we are able to close open-ended questions. Okay, perfectly timed. So yeah, I mean, I think we are good on time. So what I want to talk next is about reflections. So this is about all things that I should have foreseen before and fixed. Uh, I would do it differently. So once the first version was released, I think it's very important to openly praise people for their contributions when people go above and beyond their responsibilities. And even though the person who contributed 2%, you have to share credit with them so that they feel like a part of the thing. And yeah, I think it's very normal in software development that as you create features, you also create tech debt a lot. So we ensured that this tech debt was prioritized because unfortunately there was another reorg after we finished the project. So it was very easy for the new engineers to pick up what tasks need to be done. And finally, I held a retrospective so that everyone could vent everything. So we worked with 10 different teams. There was criticism from my team to other teams. There was also stones thrown from the other team to my team. And you would be surprised to hear that there were 50 attendees, including engineers, biz dev, product managers, and stuff like that. And very quickly, this is the template I used. So we used KPT, which is keep problem try. And what, a few good things we did here was we allowed people to collect points, to write the points asynchronously over a period of 1 week, so that when we had the synchronous meeting, we could just go over the summarize points. And we also had a vote section so that people could, so that people to reduce noise. And we also added a category section so that I could group this manually because there are 50 attendees. It's not possible to cover each point. And let me talk about 2 buckets of reflection. The first one is clear communication. I don't think I need to talk about clear communication to a Dutch audience, but in this project, we had engineering teams who communicated in 3 different styles. Even within the same company, within the same country, we had different communication styles for the teams. So one team just preferred asynchronous communication, give them a design doc on Slack, give them PRs, they'll review it, and it's done. The second team, because they had legal implications like know your customer or authentication, so these teams required weekly syncs with the product manager involved because there were a few legal restrictions that engineers themselves cannot keep track of. And the third bucket was we had the public API service, which we made 10 PRs every week. So not just a code release plan, we needed a code review plan for the team as well. And yeah, also need to understand the use case, which the odd numbering scheme will come back. So I felt openly sharing risks, being vulnerable, helped increase trust within the team because I was able to talk to the staff engineers in my team and share about hesitations about the release schedule, whether we can make it or not. And that helped get extra resources in time. As well as in the daily meetings, it should be very easy to ask questions because when people stop caring, they stop asking questions. So yeah, we made it so that it was very easy to ask questions so people that can still care about the project and not worry about, oh, I was just reorged, I was thrown into this project, I don't know what to do. Oh, and this is a personal favorite of mine. The communication strategy I use here is I receive 30 Slack mentions from 10 different people daily. So how do you organize what you respond to first? So you need to understand what can wait because some problems just solve themselves without your involvement. And you need to assign dimensions by if it's blocking other people, how important it is. And I think we don't talk about this enough in the tech industry. Some of our coworkers make us angry. So whenever I received messages from certain coworkers who made me angry, I just snooze the message for 3 hours and yeah, that problem solved itself, or I avoided saying something in the spur of the moment, which could sully coworker relationships. And yeah, again, I don't need to tell this to a European audience, but I was working with engineers in India who had a 4-hour 3.5 hour time difference. So their working hours is not your not working hours. So blocking off calendar seems like a very simple idea, but that was required. And let's come back to this odd numbering scheme because it's about to get even. So let me use real facts and figures here. So when the partner searches for an item like iPhone, they received 100,000 items. And it takes them 1 week to sort out, like, okay, I like these 500 items. So they make the offer to 500 items, but in that 1 week, the item might have changed or like the item might have been sold. So we need to do the eligibility conditions again. And once the seller receives an offer, they might take some time to accept it as well. So that's another 1 week. And the business partner receiving the item, they receive like 20 items a day. So that will also add on time. So I think the reflection I learned here was just because we added something in part 1 of 3, like there were 3 parts. So search, offer, and transaction. Just because we added an eligibility check in search does not mean that's sufficient. We had to duplicate all those checks in each step because the gap could be up to 1 week. And in this example, I said, let's say you send out offers to 500 items. Now, it's possible that I, as a seller, listed 2 items, and both of them received an offer, so I get 2 notifications. But there were cases where one seller had 16 items in those 500, so they received like 16 or 32 notifications in 1 minute, and that is a bad user experience. And that resulted in that seller blocking the business partner, and we had like 100 or 200 situations like this. So one thing which we did not consider is the holistic like experience from end to end for sellers. So that is something we could have improved. And finally, I leave you with some advice. This is some things that I could not have foreseen, and I only like. In my native language, there's a saying that this experience goes to the memory bank account. So it goes to the memory bank account. Yeah, this is how the communication happened. Yeah, you saw system architecture. Now let's see communication architecture. So as you can see, the product engineers in my company had to speak to pretty much every division. As me as an engineer, I had to speak to a lot of people as well. And I don't know if you see the resemblance here, but I'm from Japan. I have to make an Evangelion reference. So, in Evangelion, there's this tree of life, and I think it also appears in the Jewish religion as Kabbalah. So, yeah, it resembled very similar. And why this is important is, if I had to do it again, I would start with a central announcement channel with like a POC, like a person in charge from each team, because we had like a lot of situations where another team did not give me domain knowledge because they're like, oh, you did not ask. So let's avoid those situations altogether. And very surprisingly, like let's say today is Tuesday, I tell another team that, hey, we will finish the release by Thursday. And on Thursday, I ask them, hey, is your release done? And they're like, we were waiting for confirmation from you that we are still doing the release on Thursday. I was like, I already told you on Tuesday that we're doing it on Thursday. Yeah. And one kind of miracle we had is that of the 8 domains, we had like 15 engineers. Fortunately, we had 1 engineer from each team because let's say you're modifying a different technical domain like transactions. Just consulting with that person, like consulting with the transactions team is not sufficient because there are like different user journeys across different transactions that might have an overlap with transactions. So yeah, consultation just by itself was not sufficient. And I think finally, this is the last slide. So it's very important to plan for unknowns as well. So because we were modifying like 8 different domains, for some services, there was like a very complicated like release procedure in production because it has to do with like IT general compliance because there's money involved. So it took us 1 day to get from like our testing environment to dev, but it took us 1 week to go from dev to prod. And that was because we did not research these things before. And I'm not sure like how much this is followed in Europe, but we enforced like a no meetings day so that people could actually do deep work and like they could assign like time for code reviews and stuff. And it's also important to avoid burnout. One thing I would like to, it's kind of unavoidable, but we had like one coworker take like a 1 month long medical leave because they were like stressed out, burned out. So yeah, we need to also kind of accommodate for that. And yeah, quickly, working with external business partners, I think the cloud native, like the cloud environment companies have already worked with this, but the first thing I would say is trust but verify. So we had like several situations with different business partners. So one business partner said, hey, we need 2 RPS and we are hitting a rate limit. What's the problem? And I had to dig in manually and see, we have actually set the limit to 20 RPS. So what's your problem? No. So we had to like inform that like, yeah, you're making like some calls repeatedly instead of, so you're not seeing to your own limit. And that limit is kind of tied to the contract as well, the financial contract. So it's not easy to change. As well as there was one case where another business partner told us that 30% of the items they received were bad, so they had to cancel them. And I treated it with that importance. I involved like directors from product and engineering. And then I found out it was actually 10%. They just told 30%. So it's very important to trust but verify here. And yeah, some of the root causes we ran into were, it's not me, it's you, because we had like 10 business partners using an existing endpoint, but only one of them was receiving the error. But one thing which we understood by this is there were like a few assumptions that we made while writing the API documentation that we had not maybe clearly communicated with the business partner. So that is something I would improve. And come on, this is the last slide. Thank you. That is my presentation. So yeah, I yield my remaining time.
Thanks, Kaustubh. We have a few minutes for questions. Are there questions? Yes. I see here one.
Obviously, you've defined how to communicate, some expectations around there. I'm quite
Is it on?
interested. Yeah?
Okay. Yeah.
It's better.
Yeah.
So obviously, the expectations were set around communication and being on time there. But have you had some visualization? So transparency is obviously also quite important in these chaotic
Right.
and complex systems. So any word of wisdom, any kind of example that you have might used to ensure that the information is available to everyone so everyone can be aware of how things are.
Right. So we did this that whenever there were like new legal requirements or like feature changes, we updated the design doc and involved like the 2 or 3 teams involved with that part of the project. And we don't really have metrics, but we did have the metrics for the open-ended questions that we closed via the logging thing. Does that answer your question?
To an extent, yeah.
Okay.
Process-wise, the delivery.
Right.
Let's say the delivery. You have a deadline, you have a set of tasks, you have some scope to deliver. So tracking progress, are you on track? Are you at
Right.
risk? So these kinds of,
So
any kind of visualization aid
right.
and
So,
transparency.
we use Jira for issue tracking, and Jira has this thing called timeline where you can like break down into epics. Like the timeline can have multiple epics, and like each epic has like maybe iOS tasks, backend tasks, and stuff like that. So we use that for like, how do I say, immediate tech like backlog as well as like future improvements. So yeah, that was also like the Jira timeline also helped us for the like prioritized backlog after we finish the release. Okay.
But yeah, we are running out of time, and I also don't want us to be late for the last keynote
Come on,
speaker.
one more question.
One more question?
One more question.
Okay, quick.
Okay. So on the first note, I wanted to say, first of all, thank you so much for giving graduates a chance to actually do proper work. That was really nice, and I really love to hear from more experienced people. My question would be, you spoke about a lot of challenges for everyone. What was the biggest for you? So in this project, what was like the biggest issue that you faced?
So, okay, to be honest, I decided to work in a product company because I don't want to work in like healthcare or like critical systems. Like I think Morjo's talk in the morning was like, oh, we can do too many requests and like tell the client to like send the API again. But like if you're in healthcare and stuff, that's scary. You can't be like, come again. So one of my biggest kind of fears was working with logistics and transactions because like it was not very easily like, how do I say, testable in the dev environment, as well as when there's money involved. I don't want to like, how do I say, I don't want to like take like when money is involved, I don't want to like kind of work in that domain. But because we had people who had to take PTOs, and like I was the only one who was aware of that service and like PHP, I kind of like the biggest learning for me was a lot of things in tech are reversible. So it scares you. Like I never wanted to work in transactions, but for this project, I was the only one because like someone had to go to Thanksgiving, like had to go home for Thanksgiving. So those kind of situations are unavoidable. So I think like my learning was a lot of things are reversible. And yeah, it's not as scary as you think.